In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, what would Donald Trump do to solve the major problems facing the United States? He's faced some strong criticism for not getting specific enough on issues like ISIS, but last night on Hannity, Trump went into detail.
You're going to surround the perimeter. You're going to take the oil. What else do you got to do to stop ISIS?
That will be the beginning of the end, because that cuts off the money. That cuts off the head. When you take the oil and when you stop the banking sources, you got to do that too. The problem is we have people in the administration that aren't smart enough to understand what's going on. You have to stop the banking flow. But when you do that and when you take the oil, that's the beginning of the end of ISIS. They don't have the money.
Joining us now to analyze from San Diego, former Romney deputy campaign manager Jason Rowe, and from Philadelphia, Republican pollster Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, last night he did a speech in Michigan as well, Donald Trump did. He got a little bit more specific. He went a little bit more statesman rather than flamethrower. Your thoughts, have we seen a change in Donald Trump going forward?
Yes, I think yesterday was a big news day for Donald Trump's campaign, in that he had made a promise to get more specific, to talk about policy, and he's trying to deliver on that promise. I think that's not unlike what most presidential candidates do, except for Hillary Clinton, who can't answer yes or no in Keystone Pipeline. But most candidates go ahead and put out their 5-point or 10-point plans. And I think those who continue to ridicule Mr. Trump should really, instead of ridiculing him, should try to study the phenomenon that is bringing so many voters to support him. CNN just came out with a poll today showing him at 22% in Iowa. Those are not just people who want to touch him because he was on this Celebrity Apprentice. Those are people who like what they've heard so far and want to hear more about substance and policy.
Jason, do the establishment Republicans, are they studying Donald Trump, and are they taking any tips from what he's doing right now, and should they?
Well, I'll tell you, Kellyanne said he had a good press day yesterday. He's had a good press day every day, even when he's had a bad press day. Listen, I think politicians in Washington in particular should pay attention to what he's tapped into. I mean, clearly there's a frustration out there, whether it is the immigration issue or spending or our standing in the world dealing with China and Russia, et cetera. He's clearly tapped in to an angry element of the American electorate. But just because he's right doesn't make him the right guy. Listen, in the 1950s, Joe McCarthy was right to raise the specter of communism, but that didn't make him the right guy to do it.
What does matter is that, as Kellyanne points out, this latest CNN poll among Republicans in Iowa, 22%, Donald Trump. Ben Carson at 14% is next. I'm going down the list. I can't find Jeb Bush, who was the leader before Donald Trump decided to jump in. He's way down at 5%. So, I mean, maybe the anti-establishment, anti-business as usual in D.C. is resonating. Ben Carson second, no elected office.
Oh, I think you're exactly right. But, stylistically, Ben Carson and Donald Trump couldn't be more different. I think kind of the premise of this conversation is, what does governing look like under a President Trump? And, this all sounds good and it's fun to cover and it's fun to talk about. But in practice, this kind of style of governance just would never work. And it isn't even his inability to work with other world leaders. It would be his inability to work with Congress. Let me push back a little bit there. Kellyanne, let me go to you. Donald Trump last night with Sean Hannity said, here's how we defeat ISIS. We surround ISIS, we put boots on the ground, and we take the oil back, because that's their only finance, or a vast majority of their money. Not a bad, I personally don't like that idea, but it is a strategy nonetheless.
Well, that's the whole point here, isn't it, gentlemen? That at least let him put the specifics out there. If you want to reject them, reject them. That's what free market competitive principles in an election should bear. And let me just say, Donald Trump has rankled the donor class because he doesn't need them. He's going to self-fund. The Washington consultants are in a complete meltdown because he's proven you don't need 12 of them to become the front runner. You don't need a flotilla of handlers and consultants to become the front runner. Can he sustain it? You sustain it by talking about substance and policy. But let's at least hear this before we judge. And it's not just anger he's tapped into.
Kellyanne, I want to get to Jason. We only have about a minute. And Jason, I have to ask you this, because I see Romney as part of your description. You were a former Romney advisor. Mm-hmm. It seemed like Mitt Romney was running from his wealth all the time. He was trying to say, I've worked hard. But Donald Trump is embracing his wealth, and that seems to be resonating. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're exactly right. And I've actually, over the years, went back and studied wealthy politicians and how they've dealt with that issue. And it's actually the guys that have owned it that have done better than the ones that have tried to hide it. You know, wealth indicates success. And, you know, Donald Trump projects success. Even when he's wrong, he says he's right.
Guys,
and I think, you know,
he's a phenomenon, and he's at least now leading the Iowa poll with CNN. Got to leave it right there. Kellyanne, Jason, thank you very much.